Welcome everybody to Recognising Concussion to Minimise its Impact. My name is Alison Holden. This is the first of a three-part series that I'm going to give about recognising concussion to minimise its impact. If we don't recognise when one has happened, we don't know what to do, we don't know how to act, and we don't know how to minimise its effect in our daily life. So the three different areas that I'm going to talk about in part one tonight, we're going to be talking about why concussions are important. Next Monday night, we'll be talking about how to recognise a concussion, and I'll be taking you through the CRT6 form during that one. And in part three, then we'll be talking about how to minimise the impact of a concussion, what you should do if you find yourself having one, yourself, your family member, what you should do to be able to heal from that as quickly and as easily as possible. My name is chiropractor Alison Holden. My practice is in Milton in Brisbane, 52 Douglas Street. That's the nice little green circle there. I began working with this technique, the nasal release technique. I'm a breathing focused chiropractor, so I mostly went into this to do with airway and thinking about sinus drainage. And what I found out was that it's in fact fantastic for treating concussion. And so with that in mind, I needed to upskill a little and find out a little bit more about concussion. The University of Calgary and the University of Laval in Canada, every year they give a MOOC, a massive open online course, which is a free course about concussion prevention, detection and management. It's a 7-week course. It's open to everybody worldwide. If you want the certificate like I've gone, it's got a $50 charge for your certificate, but for the knowledge itself, it's completely free. The course itself, the information, is based on the Amsterdam Consensus Statement. Now, this is the most recent of a seminar that comes together once every 4 years. All the experts on concussion worldwide come together and they assimilate all the newest information, all the newest research that's there about concussion, and they compile it then into different forms, like our concussion recognition tools number 6. This is the 6th version. This is one from the 6th meeting that they've had like this, where they've then assimilated the best things and the best information to give people the tools to best be able to recognise, act on and minimise the impacts of concussion. So tonight's course, we're going to start with why concussions are important. What happens with the brain, and would you recognise it, what's happening at the time that you're getting one? So concussions can be incredibly serious. One of the reasons that Canada has the course that they have, the MOOC that they have, is due to a law called Rowan's Law. Rowan was this beautiful 17-year-old rugby league player in Canada. She died. Concussion can be a life and death situation. She died in 2013 from a condition known as the second impact syndrome, which is when the brain swells because of a subsequent injury to the first concussion. So getting a second, and in her case, a third concussion. She had 3 concussions over 6 days when she was playing a rugby tournament. Back then, she had a concussion. She didn't know it. She knew that something was wrong. They found her texts and things, talking to friends, and she was Googling, trying to work out what was wrong with herself, but they didn't know what it was, and nobody knew to act on it. She didn't know, neither did her parents, neither did her teacher, and neither did her coaches. She collapsed on the field at the 3rd concussion, and she died 4 days later. Part of Rowan's Law is that they have Rowan's Law Day, where in Canada they spend an entire day educating the population about concussion. You can't be a coach in Canada, and I think it's also to do with teachers and things. I'm not quite sure how far the law goes with who can and who can't be dealing with children and playing, but they can't be coaching if they haven't done a similar thing to the MOOC itself, or something along similar lines that gives them that qualification that they have knowledge to recognise a concussion. In America, their law is called the Zach Lystead Law, otherwise known as the Shake It Off Law. So sometimes parents and players wrongly believe that it shows strength and courage to play injured, that battling pain is glamorized. In his case, Zach did not die, but his injury resulted in the difference between a full life to an impaired life of struggle. So Zach was a 13-year-old American football player. His head actually did strike the ground after tackling an opponent. He was not knocked out, but he did grab his head and rock back and forth in pain. The official did the right thing, called timeout. He was taken off the field of play. He was sidelined, though, for just 3 plays, and this all happened before halftime, and so he sat halftime out as well. He shook it off because he wanted to be a part of the play, and he was back on the field for the beginning of the 3rd quarter. He had a hard hit in the second half of the play, and when that happened, he collapsed on the field. He was airlifted to hospital. He had emergency life-saving surgery to remove the left and right sides of his skull to relieve the pressure from his injured and swelling brain. He experienced numerous strokes, spent 7 days on a ventilator and 3 months in a coma before he awoke to his parents and his new reality of what his physical abilities were. Recognizing concussions and acting on them are vital for us to be able to prevent such tragic things happening. So knowing about concussions is important because you yourself have a 1 in 5 chance of having a concussion in your lifetime. 70% to 80% of concussions will resolve in a month, but that leaves 20 to 30% who become persisting post-concussive syndrome patients. The cost in 2013 was around $15 million annually, so you can only just imagine how much that's become in that last 12 years of time as well. A concussion definition, it's a mild traumatic brain injury. It's the type where it's caused by a bump, a blow, a jolt to the head, or a hit to the body that causes the head and brain to move rapidly back and forth. The sudden movement can cause the brain to bounce around and twist inside the skull, like our beautiful picture here showing. And this creates chemical changes in the brain and sometimes stretches and damages the brain cells themselves. It's a functional evolving injury. It's not one, the signs and symptoms can change and be delayed depending on what's happening in the brain, depending on how much inflammation is the result of the original injury. It does not show up on a CT scan or an MRI, and there's currently no specific diagnosis to prove that a concussion has occurred. It remains a clinical diagnosis, which is identified based on a person's history, their symptoms and sign on physical examination by a qualified medical practitioner. But our tool gives us a lot of hints of what to look for so that we can act on it when we see it happen. Concussion in Australia. When we think of concussion, most people think of sporting injuries. They're thinking of kids playing, they're thinking of your rugby league stars on TV playing, but only 16% of concussion that happens is sports related. Other places that concussions happen are in motor vehicle accidents with whiplash injuries, falls, violent assaults represent the major places that we're getting concussed in Australia. Every 4 minutes, someone in Australia is being hospitalised for a head injury. They're the ones that are hospitalised. They're the ones that are bad enough that they're taken to hospital in an ambulance or by family members. These are not all the concussions that are happening. So concussions are happening in a much, much larger number than that indicates. So concussions, we all think of, the direct hits. We think of you've fallen down and hit your head, this poor little man. We think about hitting the ball in soccer. We think about the hits that happen head to head when we're watching rugby league or rugby union games. Less people think about the indirect hits, which are those ones where the brain is getting shaken within the skull. So they're the ones from the car accidents. They're the ones where you fall, but you don't actually hit your head. There's also another layer where people get them, and these are often military associated. These are your blast wave injuries, and they affect our veterans. You can see in these photos the blast wave that's coming off the explosion. You can see the amount of water that's being pushed away from that boat with those firing guns. You can see the blast wave coming from shooting the gun. Now, if you're shooting on a regular basis, continually, you're getting those waves happening. If you're next to a huge explosion, then you're being affected massively, because our brain is a huge amount of water, or it has a large watery component in any case. Intimate partner violence, unfortunately, is the other place that we get a lot of concussions happening. People are not speaking about what's happening in their home. They're not talking about what's happening with their partners. And these can be happening on a really regular basis, unfortunately, for some people. But it's another place that we need to be asking our patients, in my place, maybe being aware of, that could be happening to friends and family members that's not being spoken about. So what's actually happening inside your brain when you get a concussion? Normally, when we're thinking, our brain is firing in different areas. It's firing thinking about this, or it's firing thinking about that. But when we're getting a concussion, it's the whole brain firing at once. It's creating an electric storm in the brain. Everything is firing. All of those nutrients, all of those chemicals that are being used for transmitting, they're becoming, waste products are created. We've got inflammation that's created from nerves being stretched. All sorts of different things are happening all at once. And that's why it's such an impact on what's happening in our body afterwards. So it's in and around the brain cells. Some brain cells themselves are damaged, but some are just exhausted their resources. So when we're trying to heal from that, we've got to not just repair some connections or refuel things, but we also have to clear out what's going on and the waste products that is happening from so much garbage appearing all at once within the brain. It's triggering our autonomic nervous system. Our autonomic nervous system is our fight and flight and our rest and digest. That's the system that's controlling our autonomic system. It's whether we're sympathetically driven. It's whether we're in a high state of alert. It's whether we're stopping and healing correctly. That's a large part of what's getting affected when you're having a concussion. That part of our brain, the brain stem that's involved with that autonomic system the most, that's affecting and controlling our breathing. That's breathing not just during the day, but that's breathing at night as well. So what they've found is that sometimes people who are having trouble with their breathing at night and they're not being able to use and not being able to tolerate a CPAP machine, they're thinking that that can actually be because that's more likely to be a post-concussive injury than an issue with the breathing mechanics themselves. It's affecting our blood pressure. It's affecting how tight everything is within our system. It's affecting the blood flow to our body, but also to the brain. And remember, that blood flow to the brain is going to be giving it back its nutrients that it needs. And then that's going to be how it's going to be healing with that blood supply to the brain. It affects our digestion. Remembering our digestion is our gut is our second brain as well. It's all about regulating that parasympathetic nervous system. How well are you absorbing food? How well are you being able to bring in those anti-inflammatory type foods? How well are we being able to clear out what's going on? How well are we giving it good fuel? But how well are we then able to absorb that fuel that we're putting in for our body to heal? It affects our vision and our ability to focus. It affects our ability to know where we are in space, and it's affecting then our balance. So a lot of people who are getting concussive injuries end up with balance and visual issues. They find that they start getting symptoms again if they spend too long times on computers or reading or trying to focus, trying to do mental activity, trying to keep their balance. A lot of people feel very wobbly and don't quite know where they are in space anymore. And then it's affecting our lymphatic drainage system. So this is the lymphatic system that drains the brain. So if you've had all the brain fire all at once, and then all of those chemical reactions with the inflammation that comes after that. That's an awful lot of junk that needs to get out of that brain to be able to clear it out and make room for all the healing that needs to happen. And so that's having a big effect on all of that. And the fact that all of that is going on is what puts us then in a window of risk for that second concussion injury, for that second impact syndrome. It takes a full 28 days, they've found in studies. Even if your symptoms have improved and disappeared, it takes 28 days for you to get the proper blood supply back happening like it should be happening to the brain. And so that's why that's such a high risk window of time. That's why you're now hearing with your rugby players that they're actually taking that time out and they're not coming back on the field because they are within that concussion injury window. So the best concussion is the one that didn't happen. The next best concussion, so the one that didn't happen, we can change by changing rules. So one of the things that they found when they were studying volleyball concussions in Canada was that 15% of the concussions that were happening were not happening in the actual game themselves. They were happening in the warm-ups. They were happening after the fields. They were happening at training. They weren't even happening in the actual game where it was critical that things were happening. And so they changed the rules. And over there's a whole system that they follow that has to be how people train, because they've minimized people being on the court where they're not necessarily aware of where the ball is coming from. So they always have somebody spotting. They're still practicing all of their training drills. They're all still practicing all of their skills, but they've done it in a way that means that they're not having 15% of the concussions that they were having. In soccer, in younger age groups, to minimize the impact that's happening from little kids and people without skills trying to headbutt the ball when they're too young and they haven't got the muscle strength through their neck to help prevent concussions and to help control what their head is doing. They've gotten rid of the throw-ins when they're playing soccer. They have them roll the ball in or kick the ball in instead, just because that removes what's actually at a risk. Hockey Canada, for their ice hockey, they've banned under 13s from doing body checking and blocking. And in normal hockey, I remember this back when I was first playing hockey at university, they changed the allowable height that the ball was able to come up off the turf when you were playing. Once it became too high, the other team was getting, I think it was a penalty or something that they got, but they changed the allowable height for that ball to travel without to prevent those injuries from happening. When it comes to rugby, they're still playing a little bit with rugby league. They're trying to find the best height for a tackle. They've found that they were changing the height from being at the shoulder height to being under the armpit height. So from here down to here. It worked well for the people being tackled. The people being tackled got less concussions, but the people doing the tackling got more concussions. So that's still a work in progress that they're trying to work out how that they can minimize the concussions that are happening with rugby league. Wearing a helmet properly is important. Having one on to start with is important, but if it's not a well-fitting helmet, then you're doubling your chance of having a concussion as well. A helmet should fit properly. It should not be able to slide down over the eyes. It should keep the ear open so that you can hear what's going on. You shouldn't be able to lift it off your head. The straps shouldn't be allowed to move, and you shouldn't be able to get that helmet off by moving it. It should be firmly affixed to your head to be able to prevent concussions. They've put thicker foam padding in some helmets. I think the stats that I've got were for the American football helmets, and by doing the thicker foam, they decreased 31 to 46% of concussions. So it's a matter of getting it right. Unfortunately, with our football here, with rugby, the protective headgear that they've got, It unfortunately doesn't prevent you getting concussions. It decreases your chance of having head lacerations and ear injuries, but it has not actually prevented concussions itself. Wearing a mouth guard is one of the simplest things, though, that you can do. They found in ice hockey that wearing a mouth guard decreased your concussion by 28%. That's 28% less concussions happening simply by wearing a mouth guard. And a mouth guard has 3 different ways that it works. Number 1 is that you've got something in there to absorb some impact. So that decreases your chance of having a concussion. Number 2, because you've got something in your mouth, you're getting more space in this side part of your joint where your jaw joint is coming up and articulating, connecting with your skull. So because you've got that height in your mouth, it's not transmuting the force from your jaw into your skull. That's another way that it's decreasing it. And then the third way that it decreases it is because you've got something in your mouth, the muscles here are active. So just having muscular activity and awareness gives your brain a smaller chance of having a concussion. It's a very good preventative tool. This is one of the reasons why those sucker punches are so horrible, is because there is no warning, there is no ability for the body to guard, to see it coming, to protect itself in any way. So a mouth guard for any and all sports that you're playing at every age group. It's not just for your teeth, it's for the concussion. And you'll hear now that they'll talk about the mouth guards activating with the rugby players, that they've been at a high risk and that they need to be taken off the field and being assessed for a concussion, because they've got sensors in some of those mouth guards at the high level players, so that they can see when there has been enough of an impact through the jaw that may mean that there's been something triggered. So the first best concussion was the one that didn't happen. The next best concussion is the one that's recognised and acted on immediately. And by immediately, it's seen, it's recognised, and they're being taken off the field, and they're being kept off, being assessed correctly, and being looked after like they should. Would you recognise the concussion? Would you recognise it if you saw it? You now know that you don't have to actually hit the head. You don't have to be knocked out to get a concussion. There are signs and things that we're going to go through with our concussion recognition tool number 6. Next week, we're going to be talking about going through this form, the concussion recognition tool. You can find the concussion recognition tool at the base of my website. If you go to my website, alisonholden.com, and then you scroll down right to the bottom of that first page, on the bottom left-hand side, you'll see I have the concussion recognition tool link that will take you to a site, which is the official site for the people who put these out, so that you can download it yourself. If you're planning to come and watch next week's, I highly recommend having the form in front of you so that you can see. I will be having screenshots of the form and that kind of thing, but if you've been able to have a look through it, we'll go through it step by step so that you recognise a concussion when it happens around you. And then in the third, we'll be talking then about the different symptoms of a suspected concussion that are happening. So on a physical and emotional, things that are happening to your thinking and your awareness about where you are in time and space that can happen when you're having that concussion, or that make you suspect that a concussion has occurred. So that will be next Monday, August 18th at 6:30 p.m. The plan is for that to be around this half an hour length of time for the talk